In this edition of Global Print, I'm going to talk to you about Sri Lanka. Now, you know, dear viewer, that island nation has been burning for the last several weeks. A severe economic crisis has triggered severe food and medicine shortages. But in the last few days, the political crisis has also become very bad. The Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has resigned. Violence has spread across the nation as pro-government thugs battle it out with protesters who have been peacefully protesting on the Golface in the heart of Colombo and elsewhere in the capital as well as in the country. And the situation is very, very precarious and fragile. But before I go any further and talk to you about what's going on in Sri Lanka, I'd like to make an appeal to you. Please do take a minute and subscribe to The Print. It's very little money, rupees 159 only. And you have been there with us these last several months of the pandemic and since. So I do hope that you will continue to support us. As a subscriber, of course, you get several privileges and benefits that non-subscribers don't. Back to my column Global Print on the Print's website, which I would encourage you to read if you haven't read it so far, in which I talk about the economic crisis that has gripped Sri Lanka these last several weeks and the political crisis that has exacerbated the situation these last few days. On Monday, as you know already, dear viewer, Mahinda Rajapaksa, the Prime Minister, resigned. He has since been flown to a naval base in Trincomalee, where he's hiding, and it is believed that the locals are not letting him get out. So the future of Mahinda Rajapaksa remains uncertain as of today. Gotabaya, his younger brother, who is the president of Sri Lanka, in an address to the nation on Wednesday evening, told the people of Sri Lanka that he is extremely worried about the situation. He pleaded with them not to indulge in any more violence and arson, and also said that he's looking seriously for a prime minister that will come to grips with the political as well as the economic crisis, and he also said very significantly that there will be no more Rajapaksas. Now, he did talk about himself because he is the president, but clearly he was telling the people that he understands their anger and that no more Rajapaksas will be allowed to come into the new cabinet. Well, a lot of the people are saying that, it's a little too late because these last few years since they came to power in 2019 for the second time around, there are several Rajapaksas littered across the Sri Lankan government. Apart from Gotabaya Mahinda, there were his two other brothers, Jamal, who was irrigation minister, Basil, the very powerful finance minister. Jamal's son was the agriculture minister, while Mahinda Rajapaksa's two sons, Yoshita and Namal, were also ministers in the government. Namal was sports minister and Yoshita was his chief of staff. So now all these other Rajapaksas have quit. They were asked to go a month ago, and now Gotabaya is dealing with the situation. But the opposition has said very clearly that Gotabaya has to go. There is a hashtag that is trending across the country which says Gota gotta go. And the ruling party MPs are cowering today because a lot of them have had their homes burnt, their property burnt in the arson and looting that has followed Monday's very unfortunate incident when the ruling party or pro-ruling party thugs attacked the peaceful protesters in Colombo. Now, you would ask, what is it that triggered this economic crisis as well as the political crisis? As far as the economic crisis is concerned, you know that this has been going on for a while. It was not just the pandemic that exacerbated the situation, but the balance of payments was already in very poor shape. That was exacerbated by the pandemic, and subsequently, when the country wanted to import fertilizer from China, there was the government sort of put a ban on that and decided to use only organic fertilizer. So a lot of small things have tied into to the big sort of economic situation, and that caused the economic crisis. But as far as the political crisis is concerned, what I would say here is, and this is what the governor of the Ceylon Bank of Sri Lanka has said just a couple of days or so ago, and he said that both sides, that is the ruling party as well as the opposition, all the political parties must come together to bring a solution that will address the economic crisis, because until there is political stability, nothing can happen in Sri Lanka. Now, this is a warning from the Ceylon Bank governor, and it is a warning that the political leadership must take very, very seriously, because the foreign exchange reserves of Sri Lanka are down to only $50 million. And the governor has warned, that's the Ceylon Bank governor has warned, that this is not enough money to even pay for food essentials or medicines or drugs or fuel for even 1 week. So what happens when that money runs out? Not just is Sri Lanka broke, but it will definitely lead to much more chaos. And so the second point that I was addressing is that, and this is what the Ceylon Bank governor, when he talked about how the political parties must come together, what he was also signaling was that the majority Sinhala community, as well as the minority Tamil community, must come together, shelve their differences, and talk about solutions and the way forward for the country. Unfortunately, for far too long, for the last couple of decades, the Rajapaksas as well as other majoritarian Sinhala leaders have, instead of healing the divide between the Sinhalas and the Tamils, have exacerbated it. In 2009, for example, when the civil war, the nearly 30-year-long civil war against the LTT was brought to an end, by Mahinda Rajapaksa and his brother Gotabaya, who was then Defense Secretary. And at the time, it was hoped that this was the war against the LTT, but not against the Tamil community. Unfortunately, the Rajapaksas didn't see it that way, and they rode the tiger of Sinhala majoritarian nationalism. And that has led to exacerbating this rupture between the Sinhala community and the Tamils. There is such a deep divide, such a deep chasm between the two communities that it's difficult for them to come together, even in times of crisis. But at a time like this, at a moment like this, it is essential that that happens. So here I would like to bring in the role of India, an old historical friend of Sri Lanka, and which has stood with Sri Lanka in its times of need, in its hour of crisis. Of course, we do talk about the dark chapter that was written when the Indian peacekeeping force, the IPKF, was brought to Sri Lanka, but that again has its own history. And the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord, which tried to persuade the Sri Lankan government at the time, the Sinhala leadership, to share power with the Tamil community. To cut to the present, the Indian government has offered nearly $3.5 billion as aid, whether it's in terms of fuel or food or medicines, and has also said to the IMF, where Sri Lanka is right now in talks for a loan to bridge this economic crisis, to alleviate it, the Indian government has said that it will stand as a guarantor. As for China, that's the other big player in the region, has been very, very close to the Rajapaksa family. In fact, in 2005, when Mahinda Rajapaksa became the president, he moved to give the Hambantota port to a Chinese company to develop it into a port. And when the government could not pay the loan EMIs, that was handed over to this Chinese company. And in a sense, the real estate was handed over to this company on a 99-year-old lease. And there are fears that the Colombo port city that is coming up on the Indian Ocean, on reclaimed land in the Indian Ocean, in Colombo, that will also meet this fate. Now, China has finally agreed to also help out in this economic crisis by offering it a loan. But this is only a very recent decision, because until recently, the Chinese were not very happy that Sri Lanka had gone to the IMF. But the fact is that the massive infrastructure projects that China built in Sri Lanka were built at a very, very heavy cost. And that was one of the reasons that triggered the severe economic crisis that we see today. So lots of rumors in Sri Lanka today, especially about whether the Indians are going to send troops. That has been completely discounted, debunked, and let me add my voice to all those who say that India will never send troops to Sri Lanka again, not in a time of crisis like this. It's the people of Sri Lanka who have to decide for themselves what they must do. So I will end my video column here, but do read my piece on the Print's website and let me know what you think about this video. Thank you so much for watching.